Game over.
Sister location has been perplexing people for the past few weeks as many scramble to unravel the truth behind the game and how it fits in with the rest of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. Although, like Scott mentioned before, at this point the lore may be so dense that there isn't room for a story anymore. Although this statement was made in regards to the novel The Silver Eyes, it doesn't mean that Sister Location is immune from what was said. But on the flip side, there's also the possibility that it can still be inclusive as well, and play a large role in the series of events that have taken place over all the games. For many of us, that is what keeps us searching for answers. That is what drives us to unravel the mystery. In my last video, I gave my viewpoint on what I think might be going on in this location, and this video is the second part to that theory. So if you haven't watched the first video, I highly recommend doing so before diving into this one, as a lot of points I'll be referencing were covered previously. I've also invited along a fellow theorist whom those in the Five Nights at Freddy's community may know. As with any theory, rebuttal and discussion are very important, so a second opinion is key. Now obviously, the intentions behind why I feel spirits are being gathered in Sister Location can't be expounded upon until we are given more information in future updates. But one of the biggest questions in Sister Location has always been who we play as. There are people who argue you play as Afton, the brother from Five Nights at Freddy's 4, Mike from the other game, or a new technician altogether. In my last video, I mentioned that many things point to you actually playing as Afton. Now, with that statement comes tons of rebuttal from many people who oppose this concept. And you can find this similar rebuttal on any video that pretty much talks about the player being Afton. How could it be Afton if we see him dying in the Springtrap suit? Shouldn't Baby recognize Afton if he was the one who helped make her? And why would Afton work at his own establishment as an entry-level technician? Well, honestly, all these questions can be answered, which I know probably sounds crazy, but you are just going to have to hear me out. Let's start with the first question. How could it be Afton if we see him dying in the Springtrap suit? If he is bleeding profusely as the Springtrap goes off, and this presumably takes place a few years later after Sister Location, Afton shouldn't be alive since he was killed in the scooping room. The scooping machine gutted him, and entered his body as we see at the end of the game, hinted at by the glowing eyes. Now, this is pretty much what everyone says online, and they say this because logically, this is what your mind pieces together based on what we are told in the game, and the series of visuals we see at the end. However, I do not believe this is the case at all, because if it was, then these people would absolutely be correct, and there would be a flaw in the story. However, I don't think the character we play as was gutted, and this is why. There is no blood on the scooper. The scooper looks exactly the same way it does prior to scooping us, and it also appears to still be empty after we are scooped. If you were indeed gutted, the blood and innards would have flowed to the back when it lifts up and pulls away, which is totally disgusting to visualize. You would see a red tint on the front of the device, and the back interior would surely be red due to a swooshing to the back of the device once the spoon portion lifts up and retracts. However, it's still as clean as ever, meaning you probably only pass out from pain as it more than likely shattered your ribs. Our character collapses to the floor and we see red on the screen because we just got sucker punched in the stomach by a giant metal spoon. Now, a common rebuttal for this would be, but Swanky, the scooper can rip out an endoskeleton which is metal. How could it not pierce the body of a human? To that, I have to say that I think the process of removing an endoskeleton may sound more fierce than it actually may be. We see Ballora get tossed around a bit while the endoskeleton is trying to be removed. But even after getting hit 3 times by the scooper, Ballora is still okay. In fact, her endoskeleton is still intact too, as we can still see her wires and eyeballs within the suit based on the last frame of the animation, which are part of her endoskeleton. If the eyes weren't ripped out as well, which rightfully should be attached to the endoskeleton, they would probably lose power as soon as the skeleton was severed. Perhaps the power of the scooper is more so to hook onto something within the stomach of the animatronic and pull it out. And it only gets a bit rough if there is resistance. Regardless, it is still strange that Ballora is still within her body after getting scooped. However, on a different front, we can also tell the scooper isn't as rough as well due to how all the animatronic's outer layers are still intact. They don't have any scratches on them at all, which you would expect if the scooper was as rough as it sounds. These endoskeletons are constantly put back into their suits after the automatic repairs are completed too. So if it was a damaging process, it would cause problems. With that said, if we assume our character wasn't gutted because there isn't blood, then that means our character doesn't have to die due to a lack of essential organs. And this changes things. On top of this, I am also a strong believer that Ennard does not have to completely enter the human to escape. In some regards, Ennard would only need their conscience passed on to Afton for them to leave the building. In many ways, I believe Ennard to be virally flawed. They exist due to the malicious programming within the animatronics, and when triggered, causes the animatronic to kill children despite what they actually want to do. It's as if their mind is telling them no, but they cannot resist the logic they were built on. This culmination of the bad, or so what Baby calls it, is what becomes Ennard. Because of this, he can manipulate the main character into doing his bidding by mimicking the voice of others. He's a hodgepodge of all the other animatronics, but runs completely on the bad programming of them despite how it appears. He's sort of like the Sigma of the Five Nights at Freddy's universe with how he corrupts things. This, among other topics, were things discussed in the comment section of the last video, so I wanted to make sure I addressed them here. Unfortunately, a small piece of the bad has influence over what it's combined with, and I think this is actually what happens to Afton. I don't think all of Ennard entered Afton, and I think only a small part of him entered Afton's body while he was unconscious. The body of an animatronic can be rebuilt, and the parts can be replaced, but the conscience of one will always remain. So the bulk of the body was left behind, while only a piece containing Ennard's intelligence was transferred into Afton's body. This is more than likely why Baby states she wants her entire body scrapped and only a small part of her to stay, because even a small amount of the bad will influence her. This part of Ennard that entered Afton acted as a parasite, and Afton was his host. I think the eyes we see at the end of the game aren't actually the eyes of an endoskeleton wearing a skin suit per se, and are merely there to represent Afton under the influence of Ennard. Ennard has the ability to affect the subconscious in a parasite-like manner, similar to how parasites can cause abnormal behavior in those they occupy. Think of it as a second voice in the back of your head affecting your actual thinking. These glowing eyes show us when Ennard is taking control and acting as a second conscious. With all that in place, this leaves us with a situation where Afton didn't die, and Ennard was still able to enter his body, which would mean the Springtrap scenario could take place without it being a contradiction to the events of Sister Location. And that took a lot longer to explain than I thought. However, let's move on to the second question. Shouldn't Baby recognize Afton if he was the one who helped make her? Now, this one is a bit simpler to explain because it doesn't have as many factors relying on it. If Afton helped create Baby, we don't know at what point Baby became aware of her surroundings. It's apparent that random technicians moved the animatronics around the rental facility, so it's possible she gained sentience after Afton's role was already done with her. From that point forward, he could have been removed from her everyday existence and simply operated behind closed borders. Thus, she wouldn't have awareness of him as a person. And now for the third question. Why would Afton work at his own establishment as an entry-level technician if he was the boss? For this part, it is important that we don't assume the reason of why the person showed up in the first place. We don't know if Hand Unit would address everyone the same way while assuming they were the new hire they were programmed to expect. The person who showed up is irrelevant, and Hand Unit would probably have addressed them the same way due to having flaws in the system. Any answer given to Hand Unit yields the same response regardless. So it is apparent that Hand Unit would respond in a planned manner and assume the person before them was a new hire regardless of who it was. So on that front, since the person we play as never talks, we don't know for sure why he's actually there. Hand Unit could be babbling on, and simply be getting ignored for the most part. And the only reason why this person is there is for their own intentions, and to see firsthand that the spirit of someone close to them could still be around. So with all that logic in place, Afton could still be the person we play as, and all the future events could still take place without having contradictions. But at this point, it also might make it appear that Afton is innocent, since from this moment forward, it would be Ennard's corruption that is making him carry out these bad deeds. It's apparent Ennard has influence over every other Five Nights at Freddy's location if you look closely. Ennard, who is mainly constructed out of these metallic coiled wires, appears to have expanded as some sort of virus. If you look at all the Five Nights at Freddy's locations from the other games, you have these same black wires seemingly dripping from the ceiling and covering the whole facility. Now, one could argue that these are simply wires, but I'd imagine all the buildings weren't built to be this poorly wired across the board, as it would surely be a safety hazard. It sort of reminds me of mold spreading, or like the flood from Halo. It makes you wonder if this influence that Ennard has infected the other animatronics of the building and caused them to turn sour too. But I digress. The reason why I bring all this up is because Afton probably is just as guilty as Henry, assuming Henry's original designs weren't altered. While some would argue that Henry was the one who originally created the animatronics and thus he should be at fault, Afton was aware of what was going on and helped. In Night 3, we even hear the young girl specifically say, "Daddy, didn't you build her just for me?" These animatronics were killing machines from day one, so they were designed that way on purpose, even down to the process of creating the individual parts. We don't know at what point the stomach tank was added, or whose idea it actually was. At the start of the game, we hear Afton talking to some people about the animatronics, and he is clearly glossing over the bad aspects of them. He is definitely aware of their capabilities because the people he's talking to pick up on them right away, which means anyone who analyzes these animatronics would notice these strange features about them. To me, it seems like Afton is talking to an investor of some sort who can take the technology of these animatronics to the next level. But in the meeting with them, he is clearly omitting the bad facts about them to make them sound nice and pleasant, when in reality, they are the opposite. I mean, giving Ballora razor-sharp teeth was a specific design choice and definitely not child-proof, or anyone-proof for that matter. As long as a contract gets signed with its investor, that's all that matters. While this is obviously speculating, this would make Afton corrupted from the start. He had to have some sort of sick, twisted mentality to try to lie his way through a meeting, design these horrific features in the animatronics originally, and given the deaths that may have already occurred, he had to be carrying that on his conscience as well. Because of that, I think Afton is just as dark and corrupt as he always seemed in the other games, and isn't so innocent. And I've been talking for quite a while now, and I should probably give Dawko a chance to chime in about this. A day or two after putting up my last sister location video, we connected over Skype to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's lore, and I thought he'd be the perfect person to offer rebuttal and counterarguments. So now I open the floor up to him to analyze what I just explained, offer his thoughts on either agreeing with it or shooting it down, and his conclusion in general. I'll be chiming in with notes on the bottom of the screen since I didn't want to interrupt his stance. So without further ado, here is Dawko.
What's going on, SwankyBox fans? Dawko here, and I'm here to argue against SwankyBox's theory that the technician who we're playing as in Sister Location is William Afton. So Swanky noticed a small detail in the scooper room, that the scooper doesn't have any blood on it. Now this is a very, very small detail, which could mean nothing or could mean something, but I don't think it means anything. Because it's such a small detail, it affects the whole story. If it doesn't have blood on it, it means that William Afton's still alive, but if it does have blood on it, it means that William Afton's dead. And it's because it's such a small detail, I don't think it's very valid to say, to convert a whole theory that William Afton's still alive. First of all, there's blood on the screen. Although it's not on the scooper, it's on the screen, which means that it did hurt him in some way. If you get hit by anything, you don't have blood splatters in your face. I think because the scooper goes up from down, I think that the blood splattered, like, from his body upwards to his face. Also, metal is a lot stronger than human skin and bones. All because Ballora got hit 3 times doesn't mean that we got hit multiple times too. The first blow from the scooper could have just knocked the character out straight away, and it carried on hitting him after the cutscene. Also, while the character was knocked out, maybe Ennard came along while he was knocked out and ripped all the innards inside so we can climb inside. So yeah, like I said, guys, I don't think a small detail such as blood being on the scooper means anything. I don't think it's valid enough to change the whole story that William Afton's still alive. The only person who can answer that is Scott, whether he thought, I didn't add blood on the scooper room because of game programming issues, or he just forgot to. However, Swanky made a really good point about the endoskeleton being inside this character, saying that the endoskeleton inside willingly kills children even though it doesn't want to. And that goes with the story of Sister Location. These animatronics from the blueprints have been designed to kill children when they're alone. We even hear Baby telling a story that she didn't mean to kill the little girl, but the programming forced her to, even though she didn't want to. I also like the idea that the protagonist is still alive, possibly, and Ennard is just a little virus inside of him. So, he can act normal, but as soon as a child's on its own, it turns into killer mode. However, Swanky's idea about Baby not recognising William Afton because of the because of possibly being programmed before, how can Baby remember the fact that she killed the child? It's obvious that Baby has memories of the past. So if she remembers killing the little girl, why doesn't she remember William Afton? Also, Swanky's idea about hand unit being programmed to just automatically talk to anybody who enters the location is true. That's 100% true. And that's kind of like all of the old Five Nights at Freddy's games with the phone calls. They seem to be all pre-recorded, so each night they're just automatically played. However, it doesn't make a point that Afton knows this location. William Afton 100% owns this facility. As you can see on the blueprint map at the bottom, it says Afton Robotics. So William Afton has built this facility. Surely if he's made this facility, he should know where he's going, he should know where to hide, he should know everything about this location. Baby even gives him advice to hide under the desk. Surely William Afton would know what to do when these animatronics are after him, because he programmed the animatronics too, because on the blueprints of the animatronics, once again, we see Afton Robotics. Also on night 4 with the spring lock suits, William Afton surely would know how to get inside these and outside these spring lock suits, because he possibly created them. And that's exactly the same with Springtrap in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. He knows how to get into the spring lock suit, but because of the water and the dripping on the ceilings, the spring lock shuts on him. Also, your idea about Henry originally creating these animatronics, again, the blueprints show that William Afton created the sister location animatronics, what we see. However, I do believe that Henry could have possibly created the original sister location animatronics, and William Afton has tampered with them and modified them to become killer animatronics. And that actually goes to my theory that about the gas leaks in Baby's Pizza World. Sister location is not Baby's Pizza World. There used to be a past location where gas leaks happened, as you can see on this teaser. It clearly states that there was a gas leak at Baby's Pizza World, but on the night, a group of men took something from that location. Now, couldn't Baby's Pizza World possibly be Henry's new location? And the gas leaks happened caused by somebody, let's say William Afton, and he stole these animatronics and he took them back to his sister location underground, the rental service, and tampered with them to create killer animatronics. Now, wouldn't that make sense that Henry wants to go back to this location to investigate what's going on with these animatronics, as well as his daughter possibly? Henry is a viable technician, but he doesn't know this location. It would be really interesting in the FNAF lore that Henry, the creator, told his daughter to stay away from this animatronic because it was stolen. His daughter sadly gets killed by William Afton's creation, and he wants to get revenge. He wants to go back to this underground facility and investigate what's happened to his daughter and what's happened to the animatronics as well. Probably just complete. He wants to get William Afton in prison. He wants to investigate what's happening. Why are there so many kids dying? What's going on in this? What's going on this land? Why are so many kids being kidnapped and getting killed? Obviously, Henry probably knows it's William Afton, so he goes back to this sister location underground and investigates what's going on. Another theory about the daughter linking with somebody could simply be the brother, which is William Afton's son. So it's still in the Afton line, but we're not playing as William Afton. This once again explains why the child doesn't know where anything is, why the animatronics don't recognize him, and also explains at the end of night 6 why Baby says, "Don't you want to be with her again? Isn't that why you came here, to be with her?" Scott doesn't say, "Is this why you came here, to be with your daughter?" He says her specifically for us theorists, because we're debating whether we're playing as the father or whether we're playing as her brother. I just wanted to add one more thing, which does validate Swanky's theory that we could be playing as William Afton. Scott, after the Five Nights at Freddy's The Silver Eyes book, described how the games from 1, 2, 3 and 4 have the same story but in a different way compared to the novel The Silver Eyes. And there's been a lot of debate whether Sister Location is the story of the games or the story of Five Nights at Freddy's The Silver Eyes. And that completely disregards the fact that William Afton got killed inside Springtrap, because in the novel, he doesn't. Also in the Silver Eyes novel, it details so much about William Afton, about his glassy eyes, and how William Afton is shriveled up and rotting and dying and completely skinny compared to how he used to be. Also his personality, how he's completely changed to when he was before. How it seems like something is inside of him, possessing him. And that's completely for Swanky's theory. It makes so much sense, doesn't it? So this is where your debate comes in, folks. It could be any of these characters as we described, but does Sister Location lean more towards Five Nights at Freddy's The Silver Eyes book or the game lore?
So, now that you've heard two viewpoints on this situation, just as Dawko said, we really want to hear your thoughts. Are we playing as William Afton, Henry, or someone else? If we are playing as Afton, as I suggested, do you think he is guilty of these devilish deeds, or is he innocent? Do you think the 3 questions I answered in the first half of the video are viable, or do you have your own interpretations of how Ender could take over a body? And, based on my first video, do you believe spirits are really being gathered on purpose? And if they are, what is the ultimate goal? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to give a huge shout out to Dawko for counter-arguing my logic-hardened mind. It was really fun bouncing ideas off each other and giving him my stance in its entirety so he could weigh in on it. I highly recommend you give his channel a gander if you have the time, as he has lots of neat theory videos and some scary gameplay ones as well. You can find a link to his channel in the description and at the end of this video. And with that, thanks for tuning in to this follow-up of a spooky tale. If you'd like to join me on my YouTube voyage and debate more mysteries of the gaming world, then the subscribe button is just what you're looking for. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers. You've made it to the end of the video. But wait, your quest isn't over yet. For some reason, if you watched this video before seeing my first one, you should definitely go back and watch that one, as it explains the purpose and everything going on in this one. You can find that video on the left. On the flip side, you can also check out Dawko's channel to the right and dive deeper into the lore behind Five Nights at Freddy's. He has a ton of videos on the topic, so if you like this one, I'm sure you'll enjoy his spin on things. As always, there's a slew of other videos on my channel too, so regardless, I hope you enjoy. Oh, also, follow me on Twitter. You can see that down below. I put a lot of cool hints and stuff at upcoming videos on Twitter because I don't have that really cool community tab yet. So if you want to see what I'm working on, be sure to follow along.